So the IRS owes tens of millions of Americans money from COVID. Penalties they charged, interest they collected, money they took from you and I during a pandemic while the world was shutting down. And the best part is that they were not going to tell you, but they just got caught. So later in the video, I'll show you exactly what you need to do to claim your money. Here's what happened. When COVID hit, the federal government declared a national disaster. That declaration went into effect on January 20th, 2020. It didn't end until May 11th, 2023. That's 3.5 years later. But buried inside the tax code is a provision, IRC section 7508A, that says when a federal disaster is declared, filing and payment deadlines are automatically postponed for the entire length of that disaster, plus 60 additional days. 60 days after May 11, 2023 lands on July 10th, 2023, which means under the law, nothing was legally late until after July 10th, 2023. But here's what the IRS did during that 3.5 year window. They kept charging penalties. They kept running the interest clock. They sent out CP notices for late filing. They hit small businesses with failure to pay penalties. They assessed estimated tax penalties on individuals who were already struggling to figure out if their industry was going to exist in 6 months. And every single month for 3.5 years, they acted like the disaster declaration didn't say what it actually said. But just recently, a federal court ruled that it did. November 2025, Kuang versus United States. The Federal Court of Claims gave their opinion, and it wasn't a subtle one. It says the plain meaning of the statute is that the automatic extension runs from the beginning of the disaster declaration through the end of the declared disaster period, and until 60 days after the end. So the court there did not change their opinion. The IRS cannot charge you penalties for being late during a period when legally you are not late. And here's the part that should make you stop what you're doing right now. The deadline to claim your refund is July 10th, 2026. Don't be the person that does nothing. Don't be the person that literally just goes on to the next video and doesn't think that this applies to them. I made this video because I don't want you to lose money that you are legally owed, because the IRS is not required to send it to you automatically. They are not going to reach out to you about this. They are not going to mail a letter explaining that they collected something they shouldn't have and they like to make it right. That is not how this works right now. You have to ask for it. You have to ask for it in writing before July 10th. Now, let me make this concrete because I know you're wondering if this is even about you right now. Were you assessed any penalties between January 20th, 2020 and July 10th, 2023? A failure to file penalty because your return came in late. A failure to pay penalty because your balance wasn't settled on time. Interest that started accruing on tax debt during that window. An estimated tax penalty, a penalty on an international information return. And those can be enormous, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, even when zero tax is owed. If any of that happened to you, a federal court just said you may have been charged something you didn't even owe. Individuals, small businesses, large corporations, estates, trusts, all of them. Income tax, employment tax, estate tax, gift tax, excise tax. The Kuang decision here is not small. This is as wide as it gets. And the National Taxpayer Advocate, an independent office inside the IRS, whose entire job is to push back on the IRS when it's wrong, published a report on this last week. And they said plainly that tens of millions of taxpayers may be entitled to refunds or abatements. So you may be wondering, why haven't I heard about this? Well, the IRS disagrees with the ruling, of course, right? The Department of Justice is expected to appeal. And when an agency disagrees with the court ruling and is in the middle of appealing it, they have very little incentive to send every affected taxpayer a letter saying, hey, by the way, a court just said we may owe you money and here's how you should claim it. So they didn't. The National Taxpayer Advocate specifically called this out and wrote that without action from the IRS or Congress, this situation is going to produce dramatically different outcomes for, and this is actual language from the government's own report, the well-advised versus the unaware. The well-advised already know about this, right? Their accountant called them, their tax attorney flagged it, they're filing claims right now. But the unaware, they will let July 10th pass on, and their deadline to claim that money will expire, and the legal right to the refund will be gone, and not because a court ruled against them, but because nobody told them in time. So which side you're on is entirely determined by whether you act on it immediately. So you might be thinking, okay, Karan, how do I get the money? Well, here's exactly what to do. There's a form, the IRS form 843, claim for refund and request for abatement. And you can find that at irs.gov. And before you ask, I want to tell you that you cannot file it electronically. The IRS, yes, in 2026 requires this specific form on paper. You print it, you fill it out, and you mail it. But something you should know is that because you are mailing something to the government that you must be able to prove they received, you have to send it certified mail. At least you should send it certified mail. Return receipt requested. And when you do, you're gonna get a little green card that comes back to you. Do not throw it away. If the IRS later claims that they never got your claim, that receipt is the only proof you have that you filed on time. Now, here's the part that makes this a little less scary than it sounds. You do not need to know exactly how much you're owed. You simply file what's called a protective claim. You write this across the top of Form 843, protective refund claim pursuant to Kuang case. Fill in the specific tax years where you were penalized during the COVID window, and once again, you do not need a precise dollar figure. You're simply telling the IRS, I'm preserving my right to this refund while the courts finish sorting out whether they owe it to me or not. The IRS will then hold that claim in suspense until the Kuang case is fully resolved. Now, here's the thing, that resolution can take months, years, but you should not care because you filed before July 10th and your right to the refund is locked in. But the people who didn't file, their statute of limitation will have expired and they get nothing here. So here's what I want you to do. Here's your action steps. Pull out any IRS notices from January 2020 through July 2023. Any notice with a penalty, any notice with an interest charge, CP notices, balance due letters, anything. And you want to write down the tax years involved. If you worked with a tax professional during any of those years, call them this week, email them this week, and say the words Kuang decision and ask whether it applies to your situation. A real tax professional will know exactly what you're talking about. Now, if you never had a tax professional, you can go to taxpayeradvocate.irs.gov. The Taxpayer Advocate Service offers free help. They are independent from the IRS. This is literally what they exist for, situations where a taxpayer is at risk of losing money because the process is too complicated and nobody helped them understand it. So download Form 843, fill it out for each year you were penalized during the COVID period. Write protected refund claim pursuant to Kuang case at the top. Put it in an envelope, send it certified mail with return receipt, keep the receipt, and do it before July 10th, 2026. If courts ultimately rule that the IRS was right all along and the Kuang decision gets overturned, you've lost nothing. Your claim gets denied and that's the end of it. But what if Kuang holds? You get a refund check for penalties and interest you never should have paid in the first place. The downside of filing this is zero. The downside of not filing it is that you permanently give up money the government may legally owe you. July 10th, Form 843, certified mail. That's it. Don't miss it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. My name is Karan, a tax strategist at keepmost.com. Make sure you like this video so other people can see it, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.